What are your thoughts on the finish? It's really all I can think of asking you right now.
We keep finding ways to lower and lower the bar with each one of these incidents, don't we? Um, yeah, very few words, but I mean, we're definitely going to expand on it because this is uh, worthy of our time here. But as Joey Logano said after he called it chicken liver and all these sorts of other things, that he was 3 or 4 car lengths back from him, and dominating it into the corner like that out of 4, and punting him out of the way. Um, I mean, I kind of I feel for him because he did have a near perfect weekend for Richard Childress Racing, and that we all know that team needs a lot of help. Kyle Busch has been a bust all year. He's probably with this trajectory going to go this year without a win and lose that streak he's been keeping for his entire Cup career. But you look at the other hand, Austin Dillon, Pop's grandson, he's going to have this ride till he wants to retire. I mean, this is where you're going to be. But he also has been on a winless streak since I think it was 2022 that he just snapped, and Daytona. But man, the way to do it like this, I don't see how you take enjoyment out of that. This literally was a reenactment of Dynaco is all mine, and and putting the king out of the race. I mean, this is not one that would sit well with my conscience. We can say that the game has been changed to where this is acceptable. Someone who is needing to find their way into the playoffs. But I think you and I both know. I mean, the only way you could back this up, this kind of grid up, is to go into the next few races and at least advance out of the round of 16. Show us that you're worthy of being in this spot. Okay, you did this. Show us you can make it to the round of 16 and make your way through that. And because I think we all think that Austin Dillon is going to be 16th in the playoffs and one of the first drivers out. I mean, just absolutely atrocious the way it was done, and also kind of disturbing some of the responses from people who are in charge, like Dalton Sawyer. I mean, I wanted to hear a little bit more of. I mean, he said they're going to go back and look through it, but kind of keeping it safe as far as responses, which I understand, but still, he said it was a little more than crossing the line. But we'll see. We'll look at the SMT data and see what was going on. Well, I'm sure a lot of looking to see what's been going on has been happening today, and hopefully we'll get some things dealt with tomorrow.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe, no disrespect, maybe Harrison Burton wins Daytona, and maybe Austin Dillon doesn't finish 16th in points. I don't know. He was 32nd in points entering the race last night. So he better be grateful that the top 30 rule doesn't exist like it used to. I mean, it would be a Chris Buescher 2016 sort of situation here if that rule still existed. So, but I tweeted last night, what are they going to do here? You going to fine him? I mean, who cares? He drives for a team with tons of sponsorship, slap on the wrist. Richard Childress is his grandfather. You going to give him a points penalty? He won the race. The points don't matter. I mean, I know we make the whose line is it anyway jokes, but
it's actually true, though. The points do not matter.
If you win a race, the points literally do not matter for the entire rest of the regular season because you're in the playoffs.
You're sitting until Darlington.
Yeah, the top 30 rule doesn't exist. So that doesn't matter. Are you going to suspend him? I mean, there's precedent to do that. He did it for Bubba Wallace. And by the way, we were on the air that Monday night. Bubba Wallace released. I mean, granted, I'm sure it was. He had a lot of help from his PR department when he put that statement out there, but I don't think we're getting a statement from Austin Dillon in the middle of the show tonight. He didn't seem very remorseful in victory lane. And why would he be? He just clinched a playoff spot. And clearly his conscience was clear in the moment to do that. But Bubba got suspended. Chase Elliott got suspended for right rear hook. But Chase Elliott applied for a playoff waiver and was granted one. Now, he didn't have a win anyway, so it didn't matter, but they could suspend Austin Dillon, but he'll apply for a waiver, and knowing that NASCAR almost never denies those waiver requests, I'm sure they'll give him a waiver because he's a full-time driver. And quite honestly, it creates a storyline that the sport has desperately needed for several years now because it's been lacking in the marketability. I mean, and do you really, I mean, you're coming off of the Olympic break, like you mentioned, Brandon. Everybody's talking about NASCAR. I mean, it was on Sports Center last night. It's certainly got the fan base fired up. Why would you not want Austin Dillon in the field next week? Why would you not want to see, is Denny Hamlin all talk, no action on actions detrimental today? I haven't listened to the podcast yet. I'm certainly going to do so at the first opportunity I have, because I'm very anxious to hear what he had to say unfiltered on his show today. But I don't know. Is he gonna pay back Austin Dillon at one of the fastest tracks in the sport? How about Joey Logano? He hasn't been afraid to use the bumper before. He seems to have a free pass at this point to institute some payback. And then is it going to be a Matt Kenseth 2015 situation, ironically, with Joey Logano, where the guy who institutes the payback is the one who ends up getting the suspension? And that was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we are so far beyond being redeemable at this point that I want to be angry, and I am angry, but I want to be even more angry than I am. I want to be super upset, but I just don't care at this point. Who's surprised? Who's surprised?
I'm not surprised in the slightest.
He got to keep the win.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And the fact that it happened to Joey is just so laughable because he is all about stuff like this until it happens to him.
Well, but
he would do this any day of the week. And
I don't know, but he would do this. See, would he?
He's hidden below the belt plenty of times.
Yeah,
I think it's not beneath him.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying what he did to Martin Truex Jr. at Martinsville in 2018, I think is borderline, but it wasn't this. I mean, this is, and this is what fired me up more than anything, because you see that number 3 and that number 5 on the side of his car, and you got all these fans that are like, "Oh, Dale Sr. would have done the same thing. What are you talking about? This is how NASCAR's been." And Jordan Bianchi said on the Teardown last night, "This is how it's been for 76 years." I can't recall seeing this. I was with Jeff Gluck last night. This seemed to me like it was a level beyond anything that I can think of. Anything of it, and people brought up Dale Earnhardt at Richmond in 1986 and Terry Labonte at Bristol in 99. I think this even goes beyond those two incidents. But even if you say it doesn't, Dale Earnhardt is a 7-time champion, 76-time race winner, a top 5 for sure driver in the Cup Series of all time, probably top 3 if you want to say championships outweigh everything. And Earnhardt did it in an era where it was a season-long championship. Not only would Dale Sr. not have done this, in my opinion, Dale Sr. would have already been locked in if we had a playoff format. He would have already won a few races. He damn sure wouldn't be 32nd in points and this desperate for a victory. He wouldn't have gone the last 50 races without a top 5 finish to his name. So just the audacity people have to compare Austin Dillon to Dale Earnhardt. I mean, I don't know if you just don't have the historical knowledge that, fans like us have of this sport. You don't know who Dale Earnhardt is. You don't know that when he did what he did to Terry Labonte in 1999 at Bristol, that he was booed mercilessly for doing that. And it was only after we tragically lost him when we did that he was, kind of celebrated in the manner that he is now. He was not the most popular driver. He wasn't Dale Earnhardt Jr. It was not a very popular move when he did these things. So I'm losing my mind here almost 24 hours later at how people are finding a way to defend this. And I get the whole, don't hate the player, hate the game. And trust me, if you watch this show, if you follow me on social media, you know that I hate the game. I hate the game as much as anybody. But when it's this egregious, I feel like it can be both. I feel like you can say, well, of course, the playoff system, the win and you're in incentive drives certain drivers to do this. But this is just, I don't have the words, man. I do that. This made his Daytona 500 win look clean. It really did.
Yeah, you're right.
And people did. People argued at the time. It's like, well, it's the last lap of the biggest race of the year, and he didn't like hook him. It's he just kind of gave him a bump draft, and The front end of that Camaro is not exactly straight. I mean, who knows? Now, when he got out of the car and said, I did what I had to do at the end, I think that is pretty much a dead giveaway that he didn't care, and maybe did mean to at least, if not spin him out entirely, move him up the lane and out of the way.
I think all the way back to 2018, that seared his conscience to where
Yeah.
anything in the future, I don't care.
And what about all the truck drivers that are watching this? What about all the late model drivers that are watching this? All the kids watching this that see that he is going to keep this, that he did keep his victory. I would be shocked if they decide 48, 72 hours later. I guess Elton Sawyer said, we'll know tomorrow, I guess. I would be shocked if they take the win away. There might be a fine. There might be a points penalty. I don't think there's going to be a suspension. There might be. I would hope there would be, given the precedent that was set. But the win's going to stand. I mean, that you want to cross the finish line first.
Yeah, and I hate that that's the case. I mean, really, if you want to not stain an entire generation of up and coming race car drivers, you would take this win away, and make a point that does not fly. 5 wins, and this is his 5th win in his entire career for the Cup Series. By the way, spanning back to 2011. Who else do you think is like that and is compared to Dale Earnhardt? Like it just does not happen.
No. And how did he win those 5 races, by the way? Let's go through them. 27. Listen,
majority of them.
I understand that, fuel mileage is not a talentless skill. Credit where it's due. You take wins where you can get them. But he didn't win his first race on raw speed. Coca-Cola 600 2017. 2018 Daytona 500. I mean, we all know what happened there. He had to get a couple of lucky dogs to even get back on the lead lap. I mean, that was at the beginning of this stage racing era where the 500s, kind of devolved into these wreck fests that we know super speedway racing to be nowadays. But he spun the leader on the last lap there. 2020 Texas, I think he took 2 tires. It was some sort of tire strategy, and he had his teammate at the time, Tyler Reddick, who, by the way, Tyler Reddick crossed the line second last night, and gave his former teammate a little bit of a shove after the race, right after they crossed the line. So he wasn't too happy either. But they were teammates at one time. He had his teammate playing defense for him, and it was a 550 NA18D package that was virtually impossible to pass on, and he took advantage of that and won that race. So you could argue that one wasn't on raw pace either. 2022 at Daytona, the entire field, because NASCAR Race Control didn't realize that it was summertime in Florida and there might be a pop-up shower, and they waited too long to throw the caution, and he was the only one that emerged from that, and he still had to bump Austin Cindric going into turn 1 on the final lap. He's lucky Cindric didn't spin out there. That was his 4th win. And then you have whatever we saw last night. And what's even more tragic, Brandon, is that, you're right. Let's be completely fair. He should have won that race on merit. He should have won that race on pace. And it would have been arguably his first. I mean, maybe you can make a case for Texas, but,
arguably his first real win. I was actually kind of looking forward to that. Like, wow, you're actually gonna win this on pace, and not with fuel mileage, not with tearing someone out of the way. And RCR was going to do that. And in
a year where RCR has been terrible. And listen, I think you can blame Austin Dillon for only having 5 Cup wins. I don't think he can hold this year against him. Maybe he shouldn't be 32nd in points. Maybe he should be somewhere in the 20s. You could argue, or running closer to where Kyle Busch has been at certain times this year. But Kyle Busch, like you mentioned, Brandon, he might have his first winless season in goodness knows how long here. We'll see if he can turn it around here. But
about 19 years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but you can. I mean, it would have been a great story. It would have been 2018 Daytona 500, 20 years after Dale Sr. finally won his. That would have been a great story. Mike Joy bringing back the 20 years of try and call. And I think in some ways it was a great story, but it's overshadowed by what he did on the last lap. And any goodwill that he would have had from this finish right here, well, what are we all talking about today? Instead of talking about how Austin Dillon out of nowhere in a season where he's been absolutely terrible, where RCR has been absolutely terrible, it would have been fantastic for them. It would have been a massive wave of positive momentum. And we're sitting here talking about a dump and run on Joey Logano and then a right rear hook on Denny Hamlin because he doesn't care. And why should he care?
Yeah, he shouldn't care. There's no reason to care.
This is what the system incentivizes. So I mean, again, I think it's both, because I've seen fans go back and forth on this. You can hate the player and the game in this scenario here. I think it's egregious enough. I think we have reached. I don't know. Is this the magnum opus? I don't know if it's ever going to be this. I mean,
don't say that. Don't say that.
Well, that's true.
We still have Daytona this year. Don't say that.
Yes, we do still have Daytona before the playoffs, and who knows what? Although I don't know. The 2022 race he won was pretty bad. I don't know if we can top that one either. But it just it's sad. It's really sad. That's the only word I can think of.
And drivers are normally really wanting a win, because not only do they want to get into the playoffs, but also for a lot of them, it's job security. And that's what really got me last night, because Austin Dillon is the last person on the grid that has to have a care about job security. I mean, that's at least what I have come to believe. I don't know how true that is, but I mean, come on. He's the bloodline. Like, who's going to take that away from him until he wants to step down?
Have you heard any rumors about Austin Hill getting a Cup Series promotion to that 3 car next year? You heard any rumors about Austin Dillon being on the hot seat? I haven't.
I don't think Richard Childress would let him have it.
I don't think. Yeah,
they're going to build a third. They're going to make a third car before they take Austin Dillon out of the 3.
If Austin Hill wants a Cup ride, he's going to have to bring enough sponsorship to the point where RCR can purchase a third charter.
Yeah.
Or Kyle Busch gets fed up enough that he leaves. I mean, he's not taking the 3.
No.
And
for what? Just for mediocrity, and then this?
Yeah.
And also Richard Childress is kind of worrying me just from last night. And I don't know if you saw the tweets between him and Matt Weaver.
Yeah. Like, and listen, I know Jerry Jordan was making that point as well about the ethics of the front stretch reporter. I don't remember the name of who it was, but somebody was recording that conversation. I'm sure RC thought it was off the record, but I've only been in the media center a few times, and I mean, we have people at this outlet that are much more qualified to talk on it than me. So take it with a grain of salt here. I personally feel like if it happens in the media center, it's fair game. Like you have to know that you are surrounded by, and it's easier than ever. Everybody's got one of these, right? And you can, it takes you 5 seconds to turn it on, open up your camera, hit the record button, and boom. And then you send a tweet out, and it gets amplified to thousands of people. I mean, you just, I think in 2024, you have to know that that's a possibility, and not just in the media center, anywhere. I mean, you have to be extremely careful.
They had that radio chatter. They had that radio chatter. He openly said that they didn't have that radio chatter. Weaver plays him the radio chatter. Like, the proof's in the pudding. There it is. Like, why are you denying it?
Yeah. And again, I think we can't forget, like, we have to remember that, I mean, again, you want to compare him to Dale Earnhardt. You want to say, oh, Dale would have done it. Dale would have, had no problem putting somebody in the wall. I mean, Dale Earnhardt is no longer with us because he went head on into a wall at 180 miles an hour at Daytona. Now, obviously, the speeds are down a little bit at Richmond, but it's the same. And I'm not blaming Sterling Marlin for that. I mean, I don't want to go there at all. But when that was a tragic accident, and then you know that danger has to be in the back of your mind, and you're okay with doing that. And your grandfather / car owner is going to come out and say, well, if his spotter was telling him to do it, it worked, because now he won the race. Now he's in the playoffs. So, I mean, that's wild. That I don't understand.
Yeah. This win needs to be taken away from Austin Dillon, and it won't. And but that's exactly it. They need to do it, really, but they're not going to do it. Yeah. And I don't even know if they can do it. I think if they were going to do it, it had to be right after the fact, because what other, can you name me a series where you dump and run the leader going into 3, somebody goes by both of you guys, and then you right rear hook the new leader coming out of 4, you cross the finish line first, and they don't immediately say, you can't do that. Are you crazy? Yeah.
Get out of here with that. We're giving the win to the next guy. What series would not do that besides NASCAR. I can't think of one.
Yeah, the cry that this is a contact sport cannot be put as a blanket statement over every single incident, especially this.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know. And again, like and Matt Weaver said it in his article, which I retweeted, and please go check it out. He did a fantastic job. And he said, look, I love that stock cars have bumpers. I've got no problem with a little bit of contact. You know, Revens Racing, we get that. But
he's from that area. I mean, that's all he knows.
I mean, you don't do this. I mean, this is just, again, it's so far beyond the pale that I don't know how people are defending it. I'm a guy that sits here and says, like, I can have a very strong opinion. I hate this playoff system. I mean, I think it contributed to what we saw last night. I hate overtime. I think overtime contributed to what we saw last night. But I get it. I get that, you know, you don't want the championship determined before the last race. I get that you want it to come down to the last lap at Phoenix. I get that you want a green flag finish at whatever reasonable cost is necessary. I understand that. I very strongly disagree, but I at least get where you're coming from. I can understand why a smart, reasonable person and diehard race fan can have those opinions.
I'm right there with you. I'm like on that yes and line.
Yeah. This line is, he didn't even cross the line. He sprinted past the line and didn't look back. I don't know how you can defend this.
And double down, and the team tried to cover it up.
Yeah. If you are defending it, I'd love to hear you in the comments or in the chat room right now. You're welcome to make a case, but I just don't see it. This feels like, and again, I know I said the same thing just a couple weeks ago after the Brickyard, but this feels like it has to be a turning point. And if this is not a turning point, what is it? When is that turning point going to come?
Yeah. And Weaver's sub point here on his article, I'll quote it here. I think this sums up what the same motif of discussion we've been having on here for a couple of years. In the endless pursuit of sporting integrity versus entertainment, a decision needs to be made here. There it is. The endless pursuit of sporting integrity versus entertainment. What are we? What are we trying to do? What's our end goal? And what do you want out of it? Everyone wants something different out of it. But this is where the decision has to be made. This is going to be like where you have to fork in the road and you can't look back. You've got to take a decision to move.
I don't want to. I a little hesitant to even go here because I know people can run with these things. I understand. I'm not saying we're WWE on wheels. I mean, if we were full on scripted WWE, Dale Jr. would be a 7-time champion instead of Jimmy Johnson, and he didn't win any. Okay, so I'm not saying it's not. The results are not predetermined. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's fixed. I'm not saying it's rigged. I'm not even saying that there are favorites in the control room. What I am saying is that I think, you know, WWE, what does that E stand for? Is entertainment. I feel like the entertainment is now the number one thing that we chase, and we prioritize it over sporting integrity. And that's not to say that I think we have less and less every season. It's not to say we don't have any integrity left. It's not to say our champions aren't legitimate because the system is the same for everybody. I get all that. But
with each one of these instances, you're killing it little by little.
That's exactly
what
right.
Integrity you have left.
And how far are you willing to go down that path of entertainment to satisfy the needs and wants and desires of the so-called casual racing fan? And this is the last point I'll bring up, and then we'll catch up on the chat here. I still remember, and I wish I'd said it out loud because I was out with it was my friend's birthday yesterday, so I didn't get to catch much of the race. I saw my phone was blowing up in our grid Slack because Austin Dillon was leading with 20 to go. That wasn't expected. I did catch the last overtime restart. And going into turn 3, I thought to myself, there's no way there was in contact. Just knowing who Austin Dillon is, knowing his history, knowing the position and points that he is in, that this is almost certainly, I mean, he's won a couple of super speedway races, obviously, but you know, who knows what's going to happen at Daytona, but we're coming up on the playoffs. He's 30 something in points. He's going to hit the 22. I knew it was going to happen. And I think back to 2 years ago at Martinsville when I was watching the end of the Xfinity race with my parents back when I was still living in Delaware. And I called it going into the last lap. I said, Ty Gibbs is going to shove Brandon Jones to the moon here. And what did he do going into turn 1? On his teammate, who was not locked into a championship 4, who would have been had he won that race when he was already locked into a championship 4. And Ty Gibbs has to live with the consequences, but that's what he did. And I still remember my dad, who, you know, I guess you could say is the casual racing fan. You know, he'll watch it when it's on, you know, and watch races with me occasionally when we're together. But he looked at me and asked me, like, is that allowed? Because if it is allowed, this is not a legitimate sport.
Yeah. My wife asks the same things. Like,
yeah,
should that be allowed? Like, even you know, even
so,
just a casual knows that.
So just think about that for a second. That's the kind of fan that you're chasing. Somebody who has a casual passing interest in it at best. And they see that. And the first thought in their mind is that allowed? Because if it is, then this is not a legitimate sport. And you're going to say that's okay? You're not going to take the win away from that driver? You're going to promote that on all of your social, because you know that's going to happen too. Every time we come back to Richmond for the next 10 years, you know what we're going to see in those highlight reels and those promos.
It'll be deemed one of the greatest moments in Richmond Raceway history, you know? Even
if they do suspend him, because you saw that with Kenseth Logano. Even if they do outlaw the move, because you're still seeing it with Ross Chastain in Martinsville. Like, here, look at this incredible moment that happened 2 years ago, which you're never going to see again because we banned it for safety reasons just a couple months after it happened. It's I don't know. You just, at some point, you have to laugh to keep yourself from crying.
Well, I'd like to see the comments before we do that.
That's where we're at here.